But yeah, I'll just do the intro here and we'll just kind of get into it.
Okay.
Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of Self-Developed Life. I've got a very, very special guest and a friend from my old city here, Mr. Pete DeMarco, who is calling in from Malaysia. That's why he's on the audio, and I've got the video running here for YouTube. But Pete, how are you doing today, man?
Pretty good. Good talking to you.
Awesome. Well, I have to say I am quite jealous because when I was a little boy, I had a subscription from my grandmother to National Geographic, and it was always my dream to be like a National Geographic photographer and travel around the world, and I think that's where I got my travel bug from. But you're literally kind of doing that as a travel photographer, and I'm really interested to hear how you've done that and gone from being a university professor here in Busan, where we met, to now traveling around the world the last 2 years and being a full-time kind of travel photographer. So I'm going to kind of like step back here and let you kind of share your story about where you got started and how you kind of got yourself set up to where you are now. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are definitely have a bucket list to do what you're currently doing, my friend. So wherever you want to start on your journey, feel free to kind of start from there and we'll kind of go for it.
Okay, there's a lot in there. Maybe you could just pepper some questions.
Well, yeah.
Along the way, I'll start.
What I'll kind of frame it here. I think that we met and first talked at an Instagram meetup here in Busan. Was the first time we kind of chatted, and then we saw each other at like the basketball games here, and we kind of talked about some finance and investing stuff. And you've really kind of are living the digital nomad lifestyle as a photographer. So I'm just kind of wondering how this started, how you've kind of grown this to a business, and what you're currently doing to monetize on your photos, and just kind of things like that. And just kind of, I know that you have a background. You had a website as well for people to teach teach English at a university before. So you're a sharp guy, and I think you can share a lot of good stuff for people who are looking to kind of escape the 9 to 5.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I forgot that we played basketball together. I think you were the only other dude who's as tall or taller than me in Busan. So
yeah, we're rare.
Yes. Okay. So man, where should I start? As you were saying, we know each other from Busan, South Korea. I taught English in Korea for 10 years, for
Wow.
1 year so I got there in 2007, and I went there because I lived on Jeju Island, which for people who don't know is a small island just off the southern coast of the peninsula there.
Beautiful.
And so my dad taught English at Jeju National University in 1979.
Wow.
And so our family moved over there. Yeah. Our family moved over there for 1 year. And so I had been introduced to Korea as a kid. And when I got older, I just always wanted to go back to Korea. I mean, I've been eating kimchi since I was a kid. I knew about Korea. We had Korean friends. And I really feel like I have some kind of a bit of Korean DNA in me.
Right. Well, you do. If you're raised here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, actually, a funny thing, I was actually conceived in Korea. My dad was in the army. Yeah, my dad was in the army. My mom, who's American, she came over with him. And that was like 72. He was right around the time of the Vietnam War, 70 to 72 or 3. Anyways,
sure.
My parents moved back to America. I was born in America. So I'm 100% American, but
right. But
anyways,
made in Korea.
Made in Korea, right? That's what I always tell people. I say I'm a kimchi baby. So in 2006, I took a backpacking trip across China, but mainly Mongolia. I wanted to go to Mongolia, and I ended up staying for 2 months. And then I was going to end this kind of pilgrimage on Jeju Island to see this place that I lived on back in 1979. And I had always heard about it. It became kind of this mystical place, like it didn't even really exist. I mean, for you're in Korea, it's like, oh, Jeju's just like any other place. But, back in the day, it was like, what is Jeju Island? It's like something in National Geographic, like you said.
Right. Yeah.
So I moved to, I did that trip in in Mongolia, and then ended up on Jeju Island. I was running out of money, and I had taught English before in Spain. So I thought, oh, I'll just teach for a little bit in South Korea, and did a month-long winter camp in Seoul, loved it. Then went down to Jeju, and I lived on Jeju for a year at the middle school, and taught there and loved that. And so then I got the job at the university, and I stayed for 10 years. So the connection with the photography is that when I went to Mongolia in 2007, or actually it was 2006, I bought my first point and shoot camera. It was a Canon A610. It was a little 5 megapixel point and shoot. You put in AAA battery, 4 AAA batteries or whatever. And that's kind of how I got really hooked on photography. I was just taking pictures and sharing them to Flickr, which was the popular photo sharing site, because at that time, Facebook was just kind of taking off, and it really wasn't, photographers weren't really sharing their photos on Facebook so much at that time. It was more just like a social thing. So anyways, I shared my photos and just kind of got hooked. I took a film photography class in college many years before that, but just didn't really like it. It was too slow and
right. Well,
so,
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome, man. And you said I love how you said, like, I'll go teach English in Korea for a while. 10 years later, you're like, wow, it goes pretty fast, doesn't it? Because I know that you just left.
It does.
But having 10 years here is a pretty substantial part of your life.
Right. So exactly. So I'm just looking at this thing actually while we're recording. It says we have remaining meeting time is 9 minutes.
I just saw that pop up too. It says that your meeting will end in 10 minutes.
I think you have 40 minutes. If you're just doing a one-to-one, I think you have a 40-minute meeting time limit.
Okay. I didn't know that.
It's 50 minutes.
And I guess, we started this and we're kind of going back and forth before the recording.
Right.
You know what? Why don't we do this? Why don't we just stop it here? And should we just do another start?
Okay. Just hang up and start again.
We'll start from 40. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Right.
Cool. I'll just pause it.
Okay.
All right. We're back here, folks. Sorry about that. We just had to change platforms. But so you were saying, Pete, how you came to Korea, and then you've been here for 10 years, and then you were kind of getting into some entrepreneurial endeavors as well as being a university professor here. So,
So during my time in Korea, the photo bug caught me while I was doing this 2-month backpacking trip through Mongolia, uploading my photos to Flickr. And then it was digital, it was cheap. You could take as many photos as you wanted, as long as you had batteries. And then I could share my photos and interact with, my friends back home. And then eventually I found this online community, and then it just took off from there. And then while I was in Korea teaching, I just, kept taking more and more photos and getting more into photography. And I started to want to sell my photos, or to just, submit them to contests and just see if I could kind of take my photography to another level. And like you said, that Nat Geo dream, I had that dream. I think everybody who picks up a camera at one point or another had that dream.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I wonder what I can do with this. So I started, I was on Flickr. There was a group called "Are you good enough to be on National Geographic" or something? And I was like sending my pictures in there, and eventually I was like, "This is stupid." The only, if somebody says, "Yeah, you're good enough," it doesn't matter. The only person who says you're good enough is the editor of Nat Geo, and so I'm like, I shouldn't be submitting my photos and wasting my time on this Flickr group. I'm gonna submit directly to Nat Geo, because the editor is actually the one who can say if I'm good enough or not. And so I made this little vision board thing. I cut out the cover of Nat Geo, and I put they had the previous year's travel photography contest winners on it. It said the 2012 Nat Geo photo contest winners or something. And I cut it out and I put like my photo, I put my name or something on the magazine as a kind of like visual representation of my goal. And I just like posted it on the side of my door or something. I never really paid much attention to it, but it was just there as like a kind of far off dream thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then like after like 2 years, I finally started submitting my photos. I submit to the Nat Geo Traveler photo contest. And they ended up picking up one of my photos from Bagan, Myanmar, as like the editor's choice. And then it was like the monthly choice. And then it was selected in 2012 as the top 10 photos. It was like a merit winner. So I didn't win like first prize of the Nat Geo contest, but I was like one of the top 10 selected. And then they printed my picture with a little blurb about me and my photo in that magazine, which was the actual, here's the winners. And then it kind of like hit me. I was like, oh shit, like if I actually got into that magazine, and they literally had like over, I don't know, thousands, 100,000, like a crazy number of submissions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I was like, well, like, it just kind of built my confidence. And so I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? And so I submit a photo to the Busan Tourism Photo Contest. Okay. And mainly because if you win, you get 3 million won, which is like $3,000. And so I submit a photo from the top of the iPark Towers. They're like, at that time, they were probably third or fourth.
I'm looking at them right now from my window.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're beautiful.
So I got on the roof and did like a roof topping photo from the tower. And that photo won. I got first place in the Busan Tourism Photo Contest. And that happened almost at the same time that I got the Nat Geo thing. It was literally like almost the same month. So those two things together were like a kind of, I don't know, I believe in, what do you call it? Synchronicity or signs or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? Like, okay, these two things happened right pretty much at the same time. And like if it happened once, I might be like, oh, well, it was a long shot or an accident or something, but it happened twice. And so I was like, maybe I should pursue this. And so at the time leading up to that, I also started pitching stories and my photos to magazines. Like first I started with the local ones. These are like for people in Busan, Busan Haps.
Yeah.
And it's like a local expat foreigner magazine. So I started sending articles to there or photos, and they started using them. And I don't think I made any money from it. But I just got my stuff published. And then I also sent stuff to a magazine up in Seoul called Groove Magazine. And there was another one called 10 Magazine. They're like these foreign magazines for the English speaking community in Korea. So then they were taking my stuff. I got published there. Then once I was in some publications and I had what you call tear sheets, some samples of my work, then I started pitching airline magazines. And then Mabuhay, which is a Philippine Airlines magazine, in-flight magazine, they bought one of my photos. And that was like the first thing. They actually found me on Flickr. They saw I had a picture of Bomosa Temple in Busan. And so I was like, oh, I'm sharing on Flickr and somebody's buying my image. And so I did that. Then I started getting into stock photography with Getty Images, and I did some of that for a while. And then after I got into I did some more article. I did a story for Philippine Airlines. I flew to China, to Beijing, did like top 10 things to see in Beijing or what to do in 48 hours in Beijing. Then I got a thing for CNN, for Thai Airlines. And so I started pulling up a string of published work, and I was selling my photos, selling my stories, my words that I would write the travel articles as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also got into this stock photography a little bit, and I started selling images for advertisements. People, occasionally I would even get a request, a Swiss insurance agency wanted to buy my photo of Busan. They paid me $800 for it. And I
I was just going to ask, when you're saying that you're selling these images, I was wondering what, like, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, what is the kind of average cost per photo, or what does that look like?
Right. So, okay, so that's kind of what leads me into the next part of the story, but I'll tell you, and that's a good question. And so in the beginning, when keep in mind, I had my full-time job at teaching English, and all this extra money was just like a side gig. It was just some extra cash in the bank, and it was fun. And I got to see my pictures in print, and, you know, so that I did that. And so I got paid anywhere from, like, you know, some places will pay you like $50 per image, and they'll use maybe 5 images or 6 images. Other places, if you do, that's for like a magazine. And there is no standard rate, but I'm just telling you, you know, what I got for some of the stuff that I did. If you were to write a full article with, say, 15 photos and 1,000 words, you could make maybe $1,000 for one story. But, you know, they don't, it depending on who you work for. And now these days, they don't usually pay for your expenses. So you're kind of limited to doing stories around your area.
Where you're at, right.
And these are for the smaller places. I'm not talking about like Nat Geo or Time Magazine or the big names. I'm talking about in-flight magazines, or even Lonely Planet or whatever. So the money, I was making money, but I wasn't like getting rich or anything. But at that point, I think it was like, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I quit my job teaching English at the university, and I tried to go full-time as a photographer, because I was getting these sparks. I was like, well, I'm selling some articles, I'm getting some stuff. And so I was working at Schiller University then, and I worked there for 2 years, and I'm like, I'm going to go full-time as a photographer. And I quit, and I couldn't make it. Like, I was trying to do these articles. I thought I'd be like a travel writer and photographer and sell my stuff to magazines. And I realized that the amount of time you had to put in and the money that you got back was very low for the amount of work that you do. And
how long ago was that? That was before what you're doing now. So when? Yeah,
that was like 2011, I think, or something like that.
So what's changed from then to now with you being able to, like, you know, fully for yourself? And I'm just curious.
So I quit. I'll tell you. I after I hit a wall, like realizing that, oh shit, like this is really tough to do. I went back to teaching English. And I got a job at Busan University of Foreign Studies. And while I was working there, I was like, okay, I know that later on down the road, I'm not going to give up on this dream. But I need to have another plan. I need to have, you know, a fair amount of cash in the bank, because when you make the transition, you need like a safety net. And then everybody I was talking to told me, well, it takes, you know, or what I was researching and hearing, it doesn't happen overnight. It could take 1, 2, 3, 4 years or more. So basically what I did was I went back to teaching, but then I started I read this book, you probably heard of it. It's Tim Ferriss's
4-Hour Week.
4-Hour Work Week. And I really got sucked into it. And in it, he talks about this thing called a muse. And a muse is, for those who don't know, is like this side gig or side company or side job that brings in cash, almost like a passive income sort of thing, that brings in cash while you develop your passion project or this other thing. And so I had this idea while I was teaching. I was searching for jobs, and it was really hard, you know, when I tried to find a uni job teaching at the university, I couldn't find a job.
Well, that's the thing too. They're so hard to find, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask you later. Like, it's such a good gig, you know. Like, most contracts about 10, 12, 14 hours a week, about 4 months paid vacation. Like, you could have a whole business on top of that. So I'm you know, like when people, I'm in that same situation. Like, I don't really know how much longer I want to be here, but I've got this incredible contract at a university, which is hard to find. It's hard to, it's got the golden handcuffs kind of, you know, so. But go ahead. I'm going
to get to that.
I'm interested to hear, because that's where I'm at.
Okay, so I created this like muse job thing, and which was a website. It's a membership site. It's still running today, like 5 years later. And you buy a subscription of a 3-month, or like a 1-year subscription is $50. And it's basically a site that aggregates all of the university jobs around the world, mainly in the Middle East and Asia.
Yeah.
But it's just for teaching English in universities. It's called Profs Abroad.
Yeah.
And so I set up that site, and that started to bring in some extra income on a daily basis or monthly basis. And nothing that I was getting rich off of, but it added, like, it was just one more thing that added a little buffer.
For sure, yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where to go from here. I guess you asked me, like, why leave that job? And so why not just teach forever? And I'll tell you, I love teaching English at the university in Korea. And I loved my job at Buffs. Like, it was amazing. And now that I'm not doing it right now, I do miss it sometimes. Like, I look back on it, like, very happily. And if I never found photography, I never would have left that job. Probably I would have just kept on doing it, because it is one of the best jobs in the world, I think.
In the world, yeah, I agree, man. Like,
I've done a lot of jobs. I've traveled around a lot of places, and it really is, like, people call it the golden handcuffs, because you end up staying for so long. It's hard to leave. It gets really great, and it is. And what you brought up a really valid point, which is, why not just stay? And I think that we're kind of encouraged in our culture to, like, you watch, like, Alan Watts.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with him? He's like,
I
do
love
what you love. And there's a little YouTube video, do what you love. And if you love what you do, people will follow you, and then they'll pay you for what you do. And I'm like, I'd be sitting in my office teaching English, but I'd be watching that video, and I'm like, I love teaching, but after 10 years of teaching English as a second language, or the English language, I was just, and if I compared that to photography, it was obvious that I was way more passionate about photography than English. And so that's the only reason I kind of transitioned. However, I do think that if you love photography, you don't have to quit your job. You can also have another job which brings in money, and you do just because you like it, or it's fun and you enjoy it. And you have a lot of free time to do photography, which you don't need to work for an editor. You don't need to work for a magazine or pitch or do all these other things. If you want to go photograph Bali, then just spend a month in Bali taking photos, and just share your photos on Facebook, or print them and put them on your wall, because you love it, not because somebody tells you you have to shoot this or that or in a particular way.
Well,
so I wouldn't recommend that people quit their job. Like, before I would say, like, oh, follow your dream, go for it. But if you love what you're doing, or you enjoy it, I mean, there's something to be said for that. So
yeah, I'm kind of in a similar situation. I've been here for about 6 or 7 years, and I've got some ideas for projects, and it's such a great opportunity here. And I just had a month back in Vancouver, and being in Canada, seeing how, a lot of my friends are just really, it's just a whole different work style there, man. Like, you have no time for hobbies or passion projects or music projects, because you have no energy or time after you're just, like, very little holidays, very little vacation time, long, hard work weeks. So yeah, I'm just kind of debating what my next move is going to be, or if there is going to be a move. But yeah, I want to kind of go back to, so you tried that in 2012, but what's made it go so well now? Because you've been doing this for 2 years, and what's been the kind of difference? I see that you have a course. I took a look at your photography course.
Right.
So it looks like you're teaching photography now and things like that to kind of supplement.
I'm glad that you're interviewing me about this, because you're into all these same things. So you, like, understand. Totally. You're reading the same books and listening to the same people and stuff. So
absolutely.
So what happened was, I basically hit a point when I was teaching, and I was like, well, I always wanted to be in business for myself, just full on, like, not work part-time for somebody else or whatever. I always was my dream to own my own business. And so I said, well, if I quit teaching English, it's always there. I can always go back to it.
Yeah.
But if I'm, older and don't do it, then I can't get back that time or those years. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make the leap and try it. And if I don't like it or it doesn't work out, I'll go back to teaching. So while I was traveling, and for those who don't know, when you're teaching English at the university, you get 4 months paid vacation, 2 in the summer and 2 in the winter. And I was traveling all over the world. I was going to Dubai, to Asia, around Southeast Asia. And I was taking all these photos. And as I was traveling, I realized that there's people like me all around the world. Like, we have a little photo community in Busan, but there's the same thing in Dubai or in Singapore or Kuala Lumpur. There's like groups of people who are just crazy about photography.
Sure. And
so just because I just never interacted with them as much, I always just kind of felt like it was my circle of friends that was like that. But then as I traveled, I realized, geez, this is like happening all around the world. Yeah. So I thought, hey, well, I love teaching. I mean, it's not that I don't like teaching at all. It's actually, I really love being a teacher. I love interacting with people and being in front of the class. Yeah. But I thought, well, what if I teach photography instead of English? How could I make that happen? So I quit my job, and after that, I started focusing on, instead of focusing on selling my content or my images or stories to, say, magazines or whatever, I decided to focus on teaching other photographers, teaching people the same thing that I know with the same interest.
Yeah.
Because it's harder and harder to get into the magazines and whatnot because there's so many more photographers. But at the same time, now everybody's a photographer. People start off with a smartphone and then end up
Instagram, right?
Upgrading. Right.
Instagram's a total game changer. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Exactly. And so what I did was, quit my job and then moved down to Southeast Asia. And just because it's cheaper and there's a lot of different places, to photograph and see, and I really like this area.
Yeah.
And I just started focusing on just kind of building my business. And so my focus, everybody has like a different kind of way of going about this. And what I realize is that there is no one way. Like, you have your traditional photographers who try and get jobs as an architectural photographer or a wedding photographer or event photographer. But I didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to focus mainly on the internet, on education, both, downloadable courses or whatnot, but also like workshops or tours for other people. So I read this article. Actually, I heard about it through Tim Ferriss. It's have you heard of the 1,000 True Fans theory?
The tribe. Yeah.
So there's an article for those who don't know, 1,000 True Fans, and by this guy Kevin Kelly, who was the editor, I think, of Wired magazine, and he said a few years back that basically you don't need to be.
You'll be able to support yourself if you find 1,000 people that are passionate about what you're doing. You'll never have to worry about making money again because that'll be enough to support your projects.
Exactly. So, and 1,000 is just an arbitrary number. If you have 100 people paying you $500, then you've got $50,000 a year, or 1,000 people paying you $50. So it doesn't really matter. But basically, what he's saying is also you don't have to be super famous. You don't need 1 million fans. And I think that's a misconception that people think is, oh, I need to be super famous. I need to have 1 million fans. And that's not true.
Yeah.
So I basically built my business, or am building my business, around that whole theory of getting 1,000 true fans, people who are willing to pay whatever, $10 or $50, $10 to download my presets, or $50 to download my course, or a few $1,000s to go on a tour. So I built. So that was like that's the kind of foundation of my business plan.
Awesome.
And then on this build, connected with that though is like, how do you connect with these 1,000 true fans? And for me, that is email. Most people right now are focusing on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, but I don't put really so much emphasis on that. Really what I work the hardest at is my email, because I tell people, I'm like, email is the new Instagram, because it allows you to share what you want in the way that you want to share it, in the format that you want to share it. And there's no other distractions that comes along with email.
Yeah.
And also with email, as you probably know, like they always say, like email is, you know, you own the list. So my fans, my 1,000 true fans are my business. But if my 1,000 true fans, I connect with them through Instagram or Facebook, that's actually, you know, Facebook's business, because every time I post something, I'm driving traffic to Facebook. And whenever I want to connect with those people, sure, I'll reach a few of them. But if I want to reach all of them, I've got to pay money because of the algorithm.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
you're right on. Yeah. The money in the list. Yeah. Build a list.
Right.
Yeah, no, that my background's in internet marketing and stuff. So like I definitely understand the importance of that. And no, that's phenomenal, man. That's really smart. And yeah, I took a look at your site. So it looks like you have a course, like a video course for like about $49 that you kind of teach people the A to Z on getting set up with different kind of equipment and different kind of methods and things like that. Is that kind of your main offer right now?
That's one of my main offers right now. So the one of the big misconceptions, I think, is like there's this whole thing about passive income and make money online and get rich and all that stuff, but it's totally not true in my opinion. Like passive income is not passive. You still have to work for it. Of course, you might get paid while you're sleeping, but it just means your money comes in while you're asleep, but you're working your ass off while you're awake.
You put the action in to generate that traffic or that, you know, click.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so the other thing is, it's not passive. You've got to work at it, and it doesn't happen overnight. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's, you know, it happens quickly. The thing though is that whatever you do, whether it's photography or, you know, teaching surfing or whatever you want to do, is you can't be just good at that thing that you do. You have to know marketing, because you can make a great course, but once you put it on your website, nobody buys it, because, you know, unless you have some magical thing happening where you're getting a ton of traffic, like if you don't know how to put that across to people that, you know, here's their pain point and this is how you're going to solve it, here's the value you're going to offer, then it doesn't connect and you're not going to sell anything. And so I've actually spent these last like 2 years learning more about marketing and digital marketing or email marketing and running a business than I have of actually doing the photography, and and also making a course. It's like, how do you record yourself? How do you edit the video? You know, and then how do you distribute that? How do you get out there? How do you work with affiliates? How do you, you know, pitch other products?
You know, there's so many moving parts, and I'll just say that, you know, one of the best examples is one of my best friends became a lawyer and opened up his own law practice, and he spent however many 7 years in law school learning all about law, but nothing about how to run his business or his practice. So there's nothing about, you know, hiring employees, you know, doing the books, advertising, marketing, how to get a website, outsourcing, all that stuff. I actually just interviewed one of the top copywriters in America, named Mitch Miller, on an episode I'm going to be releasing here soon. He said the same thing. He's like, everything comes down. It doesn't matter if you have the best product in the world. Go buy, you know, a whole wholesale order of that product, put it in your garage. But if you don't tell people about it, it's going to be in your garage for the next 5 years, even though it's the best of the best. You know, you have to get your message out there. So I think that that's something that, you know, and that there's Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. You know, he got a lot of flack from like really accomplished authors saying, you're not an author. You're not a best-selling author, you know? And he's like, well, I'm not the best author, but I'm the best-selling author because I know how to market. And that's something I always remember, that, you know, whatever you're doing in life, everyone's in sales and in marketing in some some regard.
Exactly.
So,
And if there's anything I've learned at the time since I left the university, whether I end up being a photographer for the rest of my life or quitting in a year and going back to teaching or whatever, if there's anything I learned, it's just about marketing yourself, like you said, which is something that you're going to use at any point in your life. I mean, you can apply it to whatever you do later on in your life. Talking about that book, I read that book, and I love his idea about having the the assets or investing, like paying yourself first.
Yeah.
And so while I was I want to just make one thing clear. Like sometimes people see me or they make comments like, oh, you're so successful, or, oh, you're really doing it and living the dream and all that. And I am like, moving in that direction or making it happen. But to be honest, I'm not at this point, even, 2 years into it, I'm not making a living off of just my income from photography. Mm-hmm. So I have other revenue streams, which is also something that I read about in Tim Ferriss's book and other books, was like not having your eggs in one basket. So I have one revenue stream is my website, my Profs Abroad website there, the job website. Another revenue stream is actually my investments. So for anyone who is in Korea now or living abroad teaching English or whatever, save your money. So I paid myself first. I did what he says in that book, and I just crammed away money and just kept on, saving as much as I could. I wasn't eating noodles every day. I still bought nice gear and I still traveled and I still did all that stuff, but I didn't get ridiculous like I see some people do. I just kept saving away my money. So I have my investments. I have that business, the Profs Abroad. I also have another small business I started a long time ago, another side business that has to do with selling olive oil.
Interesting.
With my dad. Yeah. So I actually have
one of my old high school basketball teammates has done extremely well selling olive oil from the Middle East. He's from Turkey, and he sells it. He takes it from Turkey back to Canada, and he's killing it in that niche. Like, so that's interesting that you said that. I could connect you guys if you want, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And we had a couple conversations before you left about investing, and we were talking about dividend stocks and that, buying index funds and things like that. So yeah, you're definitely, on the right path with, and I appreciate you being straight up, because a lot of times people might hide behind that persona that they're, oh yeah, I'm living the dream, which not saying that you aren't, but people have this image that they're like, oh, well, he's a millionaire or whatever. But you set yourself up, you laid the foundation to be able to be where you're at through the, like you said, saving money, investing it, starting side gigs that are paying you, not a ton a month, but it all adds up to be substantial because you have all these different income streams coming in, which is, very, very smart.
Exactly. And I just I think sometimes you hear people talk about doing online businesses or passive income or something like that, and they make it seem like, oh, you just do this and build a site and make a course and you sell it and you're rich. And it's totally not like that. And I mean, in a sense, I'm not making a living or living solely from my income based around photography, but who's to say that I won't in a year or 3 years or whatever. It's just something that I started, and it's something I'm building, and it takes time. And on the other hand, and there's that thing about living the dream, and it's kind of like, well, what is the dream? And for me, the dream is, thinking about, breathing, talking about, and working with photography every day, and building my own business. And so for me, that's the dream. So it's not necessarily, of course, would I like to be rich or have all this money or whatever? Yes. But really my end goal is to be able to make photography as big a part of my life as possible. And whether that's on my personal projects or through a business or whatever, or teaching people photography. So in that sense, I am living the dream because I'm doing what I want to do when I want to do it. But is it a road paved with gold, and is it easy? Absolutely not. I work way harder now than I ever did when I taught English.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because it's definitely good for people to get a dose of reality to say it's not like you just open up an Instagram account and all of a sudden you have, you know, like 11,000 followers and everything like that. Like there's a process in place to get to these, you know, places. And I actually interviewed, I'm sure you met her because she's been here a long time as a working photographer. Sasha, the Russian Korean girl, Alexandra.
Yeah, she's a friend of mine. Yeah, she's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, she's awesome. And I actually just interviewed her. And that's kind of when you popped up in my mind too, to be, oh, this would be a great, you know, other interview about photography. And, you know, one of the things that she said, because she's done a lot of like wedding photographies and kind of like portrait stuff, not so much the National Geographic side like you have. But she said the same thing, you know, like it's just like a business. It takes work. It takes a lot of moving parts to make it work. And it's not all just like, you know, fashion shoots and, you know, Seoul Fashion Week. Like when she posts, everyone's like, oh, you just got to go to Seoul Fashion Week to, you know, take photos with all these gorgeous models. No, there's a lot more behind the scenes like you shared. So I'm glad that that's, you know, transparent. But moving forward, you know, like if you could see yourself down the line, what would be, I kind of ask people is to wrap up is like, what would be your ideal dream lifestyle? You know, like it sounds like it already kind of is, you know, you're living in a place you want to live. You're really immersed in photography. You know, but if you have any other goals on your bucket list or your vision board that you mentioned earlier, what would those be, and how can people potentially help reach out and support you in doing so?
They can join my workshops.
Cool. Yeah, I'll link that up below. Definitely.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, I think you're right. Like I said, I mean, I'm kind of doing now what I want to do. I think I don't have any plan like, you know, 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road where I ultimately want to be. Like other than, of course, I want to have a self-sustaining business and something that I could live off of and, you know, have a secure financial future. Like that's definitely a goal.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed is that when you're taking the avenue that I have, which is doing, you know, focusing more on creating courses and internet marketing and that sort of thing, if you do that, and also even just being a freelancer in general or an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, it can be very isolating. You're, you know, sitting home alone and people think, oh, you're out and you're like traveling and shooting all these amazing places. But maybe that's like 20% of the time. And the other 80% of the time, you're, you know, writing the next email or creating the next course or whatever. And it's like you alone at home in front of your computer.
Yeah.
And what I realized is that as I've, you know, been doing this now for a while, is that I really like being in front of or with other people, like teaching. And I'm not like a super introvert. Like I am introverted at times. Like I love like putting on the music and editing a photo or my photos and just chilling out and being alone and totally getting into my head and my creative side. I love that. Like that's like one of the best feelings. But at the same time, I love like when I was teaching English, like every day I saw, you know, 100 students. I had 3 classes with 30 students in each class. So like 3 or 4 times a week, I'd be in front of 100 different people each day.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'd be interacting with all my coworkers. And so my job was like a very like socially stimulating type of job. Whereas now it's like alone. So it's like, for me, I think the biggest thing is finding the balance between, you know, how do you run a business as a solo, you know, a solopreneur or, you know, one person, but then at the same time, you know, and have some part of your business be online or on the internet, but then at the other time, still be able to be out and interacting with people and not just, and I'm not talking about like just going to the gym and seeing people or, you know,
having meaningful connections, meaningful conversations.
Yeah, but also teaching, being in front of people, sharing your knowledge and experience with other people, going through an actual experience. So my main thing that I'm been focusing on is really kind of transitioning my job or finding a way to create a life that pulls me away or less of, you know, sitting at my desk behind my computer and just being more out into the world with people. And I'm working towards that. And if I had to tell you exactly, I can't really say, oh, there's this one thing that I want to do. Although one thing would be, you know, a in-person workshop or photo tour, which I will be doing one soon. I mean, in next year.
Cool.
Um,
You know,
so anyways, yeah, I'd say that's the kind of direction that I want to move in.
I totally understand, because we just kind of switched roles. Like before I came to Korea, I was doing my own online business for 3 years. And it was me when I was like 25, 26, 27, 28 years old. And I was just like alone in my apartment downtown Vancouver when all my friends were at their jobs and offices and Christmas parties and stuff like that. And I was just like, and that's what got me into traveling. So I'm like, well, it's kind of boring here. Why don't I go to like Europe for 3 months and work there online? So like, I totally understand what you mean. I actually have an interview lined up next week with a good friend of mine who was in Busan, and he started a really cool project where he's doing digital nomad kind of traveling work live setups, where he gets a group of like between 10 and 20 people like yourself, digital nomads, and gets like a big not resort, but just like a living space for all of them. And everyone lives and works in this big kind of community, and each person kind of has like a different skill that they kind of share and teach with the other group members. And then they're there for like the whole month, and then, you know, they go to another place. So he just is doing his first one right now in Bali, and then he's doing his next one in Thailand. So he's kind of like solving that problem that so many solopreneurs have, saying like, hey, you know, yeah, you work alone, you work online, but you can come work together with all these other people that are doing something similar. And I think it's I think it's a really smart idea. And he's got a bunch of people that came to his first one this month in Bali, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, when I do that episode, I'll connect you guys, and
Okay, yeah,
maybe you can collaborate something in the future. But yeah, well, I think that nowadays with online and offline, you know, people are really lacking that human connection, you know, and
right.
and yeah, so I think that
And
like
that's what.
even something like, I don't know if you follow, do you follow Clark Little on Instagram?
No, I don't know who he is.
I'll send you his profile. He's like a huge ocean photographer. He lives in Hawaii, and he just opened this incredible art gallery in, I think, Honolulu or something. But he's killing it with his photography, because he's kind of bridged that gap between online, just Instagram photos, and a place where people can come in and actually buy works of art. And he made like board shorts out of them, and like he's created a really creative and I think fulfilling business for himself. So yeah, I
Is
think
that
that
what he photographs waves?
yeah.
I've seen him. Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, super cool. And like I said, he's kind of now doing kind of like what you said, doing workshops at his art gallery, and has a physical space where people can come, and he's got that social interaction. So, you know, you're very, you know, not to say that you're new in the game, but you've accomplished a ton in the short time you have been in here. And I think that there's only up to go. So don't be too hard on yourself. But I know that it's kind of like, you know, you just want it now, you know, like, let's just do it all.
Exactly.
But I think that, you know, just obviously knowing who you are as a person, you know, you're a smart guy, you know how life and business works, and you'll figure out ways to find what you want and how to make that work as well. So no, I'm really glad that we got the time to connect here. And yeah, I'm going to put the ball in your court. If there's anything else you want to share, or I want to be conscious of your time here as well, not to go too long over, but yeah, is there anything else that you want to kind of bring up or touch on?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I guess ultimately it's just about, you know, creating the kind of life that you want to live. I've always been like big on that. I've read a lot of self-help books and all that stuff. And I find a lot of people who do this also do as well. We kind of get sucked into the like
Absolutely
dreamer thing, and you're like, just give it a shot. But I really think that there is no one way to make it happen. And if you're listening to this and you think, oh, well, I'm going to follow what Pete did. I mean, I tried doing that and following, you know, like you see somebody else who's successful in a certain way, and then you follow that.
right.
And maybe it doesn't hit off as well. So I really think there is no one way.
No.
of going about it. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can make a living as a photographer. So I think really it's just a matter of kind of, and maybe you don't need to make a living as a photographer. Maybe it's better to just keep it purely as a hobby and just have side projects, and you can still even publish your work in places and or do exhibits or whatever it is that you want to do. So
Sky's the limit.
I just never want to say like, yeah, follow your bliss and go for your dream and then do it. And then it's gonna, you know, you'll be rich or whatever. Like, it's really just about like, what is the kind of, you know, what do you ultimately want to do? And do you really need to quit your job to go and do, you know, that thing? Maybe it's just something that you like want to do on the side. So,
well, I think that's really smart, because I'm sure you also follow Gary Vaynerchuk.
yeah.
Yeah. And he's pretty extreme, but he talks about, you know, like patience, you know, like, hey, you work 9 to 5, but from like, you know, 7 to midnight, you could be building, like you said, your side muse or project, you know, for however long it takes. And just because you're not 20 anymore or 30 doesn't mean that it's over for you. You know, like there's so much opportunity, no matter how new or old or young you are, and technically, you know, gifted or not. You know, I just got my dad his first ever cell phone at the age of 76, and his first ever email address. My dad didn't have any email address until now. Like, he's 76 years old, and now he's texting me all the time, and he loves you. Like, I'm so, and he didn't want me to get him on the phone. He's like, no, don't do it. I don't want it. I don't need it. Now he's got it. He's got like, loves Spotify. All of his old songs are on there, and watching YouTube videos and stuff. So like, yeah, you know, I think people, they underestimate, or they overestimate what they can do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. You know, I think that's a good mentality to kind of go into any new venture with. Just commit to it, and just say, you know, I'm going to do this until, you know.
Right. Exactly. Just try it. You don't know.
Out of curiosity, are you connected with Edward Vieira, a guy that was in Busan and now he's in China?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I should connect you with him.
I don't think I know him.
I should connect you with him. He's done really well with Instagram. I actually just did a podcast with him that I'll be releasing soon too, about, you know, he's getting tons of sponsorship deals where he just,
really,
they fly him into a resort, and he's like, he was just all over. He invited me to go on his last trip. Yeah. He was in, just all over Asia, actually, just doing all these high-end hotel, gigs. And, it's been very lucrative, and he's really kind of mastered the Instagram game. So yeah, I can definitely connect you with him, and I'll show you that episode when I post that as well. It was really insightful.
Okay.
About how to kind of really start getting sponsorship deals and stuff like that, which could be really interesting for a lot of people too. But that's awesome, man. Well, I'm gonna kind of wrap it up here. Just thanks again for your time and all the value you shared, and it's awesome to kind of get to know you more than we've kind of chatted in the past. But all the best.
Yeah, same here.
Well, let me ask you this:
Thanks.
what's the number one thing you miss about Korea? Since you were here for 10 years, you're basically half Korean, conceived here. What's the number one thing after 2 years not living here? What do you miss most?
Probably the grilled pork.
Yeah.
The samgyeopsal, like the quality of the pork is so good, and there's just like the atmosphere and the grill on the table. I mean, I've been to Korean restaurants outside of Korea, but the quality of the meat is never the same. So yeah, definitely the food is probably the top, right there at the top.
I could relate. And well, when you come back, let's go grab some Korean barbecue together, my friend.
Awesome. Oh, can I plug my my website?
Yeah, I'm going to put the link down below, but yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
The website is thenomadwithin.com, and I have all my links to stuff on there. It's my landscape photography course and upcoming workshops or tours, and also I share my tips and other things as well in my newsletter, which you can sign up for on my website.
Get on that email list.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put the links down below, including your your Instagram,
Instagram
photos and everything. Is there, you know, you're a National Geographic. You won the award. You're living my childhood dream, man. You're living my childhood dream. So Congrats on everything, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks,
and
man.
we'll see you around the world somewhere, man.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a blast.
Absolutely,
Great talking
man.
to you.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'll just stop this recording. Cheers.